All right, we're back and we're going to do class 6 now, removing blocks. So just to recap, we know what makes you flow. We know what gives you meaning. 2 very high indicators of happiness, 2 things that are highly correlated with happiness. We've packaged it into a mission statement. We know what your external values are that we need to watch out for. We've created goals that are coming from your mission and are not coming from your external values. They're things that will really, really satisfy them. We have very specific steps that we're going to be taking, and you're going to start doing more and more of these steps every day. So the thing that we're going to be focusing on now is what is going to get in your way of accomplishing these goals. That's something that's very important anytime you're setting up a plan, is thinking ahead what's going to get in your way. And we call that blocks because that's standing in your way. It's going to block your ability to move forward. And there are 2 kinds of blocks that we want to be really careful about. One are external blocks and the other are internal blocks. External blocks are, imagine you want to go swimming 5 days a week. An external block may be thunder or lightning. That's an external block. It's coming from outside of you. It's going to get in the way of you accomplishing your goals. An internal block may be something like negative self-talk. I can't do it. Who am I to exercise? So on and so forth. And so those are 2 different kinds of blocks that you want to make sure you're aware of. Thinking ahead, I've placed these great goals and steps in front of me that are going to get me further and further with my mission statement. What's going to get in my way? Internal blocks and external blocks. A lot of people's internal blocks have a lot to do with their external values. It's internally blocking me that I care about all of these external values. So think about that a little bit. Look back at your external values. All this process is going to all come together. You're going to see these are all steps that all fit together. We want to make sure you actually start moving forward with your goals. So what's going to get in your way? What are the different things that can get in your way, internally and externally? That's number 1. The second thing we're going to do with this is come up with a contingency plan or ways of removing those blocks. So in the case of swimming, right, if a person wants to go swimming 5 days a week and they think, well, what could get in your way? Okay, thunder and lightning. Well, what else can you do? What's a plan B that you may come up with? That's a way of removing those kinds of external blocks. Sometimes come up with, I'll walk around my living room for 15 minutes. Great, you have a great plan B. Internal blocks, you have these external values. We're going to talk about the biggest block that a lot of people have in a minute that is internal. What are you going to do to overcome that? What are the different things you're going to do to overcome that? The biggest thing that most people have that gets in their way internally is something called cognitive distortions, or more importantly, negative self-talk. Cognitive distortions are when we look at reality and we skew reality in a way that is negative. And the most damaging of all of that is viewing ourselves in a negative way. We're having thoughts about ourselves and about our potential, about our abilities, about who we are as human beings that are negative. And what I want you to do is a very powerful exercise in this segment, which is to identify something I call the 1 phrase, which is if you take all of the negative self-talk that gets in your way, and we all have it, we all have different statements that go on in our mind over and over and over, and you narrow it down to 1 self-statement that summarizes all of it into 1 statement. I am something negative, or I am not something positive. And I'll give you an example. With a lot of people that I work with, it's something along the lines of, I'm not good enough. And that may be something that we picked up from childhood, maybe something that we picked up subconsciously from school, from all of these external values, and not feeling like we measure up to that. And so those are some of the blocks that we have, but this is one of the number 1 blocks people have, which is internal, and that's that 1 phrase that goes on in our mind. And we're going to have different ways of overcoming that in the next exercise, but right now it's about identifying what's going to get in your way and identifying some ways to remove that. And I'd also like you to have down on paper what your core mistake is. As one of the famous psychologists put it, this notion that we all have this core mistake, this identity, this mistaken sense of self that we believe something could be something along the lines of I'm not good enough. And we're going to have ways of removing that one. But for all of the other ones, I want to see if you can come up with different ways that you can overcome those blocks. If they're external, find some ways of overcoming them. If it's a real physical block, if it's someone negative in your life, what are you going to do about that? What are some ways you can overcome that? That may come down to minimizing the amount of time you spend with that person. You know, you're kind, nice, pleasant when you have to be with them. Don't let them know that you're trying to avoid them, but find a way that you can spend less time with them because they're a negative force in your life. That's a way of removing that kind of block. Think of what may stand in the way of you maximizing your potential, of you fulfilling your life's purpose through all of these goals that you've set up, and find ways around them. What are different ways that you can get around them? Again, this may be something that's really useful to talk through with a friend, with someone that you really trust, to help you come up with different ways of removing these blocks. But a lot of times, you know, most of the people I work with, they're really smart, they're really resilient, they just don't know it. We have to kind of access that internal knowledge that we have of what is the best plan for me to overcome this, and see what you come up with. So we're going to do this exercise right now. It's got 3 steps. We're on page 12, class 6, removing blocks. Step 1, list your blocks. I put 3. You may have 1. You may have 20. Right? Write on a piece of paper, if this is not enough room for you on this worksheet, what are the different things that are going to come up with your blocks? You may want to go back to your goals right now. Take a look at the last exercise you did and go through line by line. I made this step I'm going to take. What may get in my way? What can I do to overcome it? Next step. Okay, next goal. I'm going to do this. Well, what may get in your way? What will I do to overcome it? Go through each one of those goals that you have and the different steps you've set for yourself and see what you can do to overcome it. What may get in your way? Think ahead, right? A good driver is always looking ahead. What may be coming up? You guys want to become really good drivers. And the place you're trying to get to is called your mission statement. That's the road. And it's also the destination for you. And so you're going in that direction. What may come up down the road for you? You've tried this before in your own way. You've tried to make this, your life mission in different ways. What are some things that got in your way the last time you tried this? What derailed it for you? Now, think of what worked for you in the past to overcome it. Sometimes we fail 99 times out of 100. What's important is the one time that you succeeded. What did you do that one time that you succeeded? And get that down on paper. Do more of that, because that worked for you. It doesn't matter that you failed 99 times. It matters that you know the one time that you succeeded, and you know the different steps you took to overcome that. So go back over your goals. Look at all the different goals you've set for yourself. What's going to get in your way? What's gotten in the way in the past? What have you done in the past that has been helpful? What can you imagine you could do that might be helpful, that at least you'd like to give it a try? Come up with some possibilities for yourself. Things that are internally blocking you, things that are going to be externally blocking you. Internally, my own negative self-talk. Externally, not enough support, not enough money. Come up with all the different things that, some people would say are your excuses, but they're all different blocks that have come up for you in the past. And what are you going to do about it? And then I'd also like you to identify the biggest block of them all, the one phrase. I am not what? Any questions before you guys do this?
Can you give us an example of an I am or an I am not?
Sure. So the question is, can you give us an example of a core mistake of the one phrase, I am not? The most common example I hear from people is, I am not good enough. I am not good enough. And you can imagine where that comes from. It comes from external values. Those are those external measuring sticks that we never felt we measured up to. Coming from education, from parents, from society, media, so on and so forth. We never measured up to it, and we gave ourselves a low score. This is where the low self-esteem is coming from. You're giving yourself a low score. And we're going to talk more about how to give yourself a higher score. But right now, let's identify what is the biggest happiness vampire in your life. Here it is. It's this negative self-statement. In other words, this is the result of you engaging these external values. This is how it makes you feel. This is what it makes you think about yourself. And as we know from psychological studies and theories, this is a mistake. It is not who you are. It's not based on reality. It's It's based on distortion. You could do 99 things right and one thing wrong and then say it was a total failure. That's your choice. You can give yourself a low score.